In this video, I am going to make this charcuterie board. So it was a really fun project. I also got a major thumbs up from my wife on this project, so that was really cool. So if you get anything out of this video, if you learned anything new or just got a good laugh out of it, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe down below. Now let's get into the video. Okay, so we'll just be using some cherry that I have a number of different boards here with it. This is going to be our inspiration. Only size and this handle part here, the board I'm going to create is going to have a handle similar to this, one on both sides. And why I'm doing this size is this is what we've been using so far for our charcuterie board. So I figured we'll start with that for a size. So for that, the size will be 18 inches by 12. So that's going to be our size. So I will begin to cut these things down. I'm going to mill them up a little bit. They're all pretty similar in size, thickness wise, so I might be okay with that. So I'm probably going to joint them, get them glued up. I'll leave them, they're all a little bit longer right now, but I will clean that up once I get them glued up. And then we'll kind of go from there. And then we'll cut the holes on the ends. We'll prepare it for finish. And hopefully it'll be a quick and easy project. This will be my first time using my Win jointer. This is a 6-inch Win jointer. I had an unboxing video on it earlier. I'll put a link down below to that. But just running all the different ones through, just making sure that they are flat and then running the edges down to get an edge joint. I really need these joints to be as perfect as possible because again, it's going to be a charcuterie board and I want them to line up perfectly. The previous jointing jig I had built, it worked pretty good, but I really wanted to get a little more accuracy with it and get things jointed much better. So that's why I went ahead and bought this jointer, and it worked very well. Okay, so I have a piece of paper here. So when I do my glue up, it does not go to my bench top. You saw me tape it down. This wasn't to protect anything out here. It's because it's over 90 degrees here. I have a fan blowing over there, and that fan is making the paper kind of peel up. So now that I've got it taped down, turn the fan back to me, and it doesn't move around. So now I will be getting this ready. So I'm not going to worry too much about getting it all straight. I'll get it somewhat on this side because I'm going to cut the ends down to size. And I don't know if I mentioned before, but I'll leave this one a little bit longer. This is so when I run it through my planer, I will prevent snipe happening from the planer. The snipe will happen here, not here on my boards. So I will go ahead and get this glued up. I'm probably going to let it dry maybe overnight, and then I'll run it through the planer, and then I'll cut it to size, and then I'll cut the handles out, put some board butter on it, not board butter, but board oil on it, and should be good to go. So just getting the glue up here going. So I'm using Type Bond 3, which is good for things that will be getting wet and also that has food on it. And then I'm putting it all down. And then you see me put some cauls on here in a second to try to keep it as level as possible. At the very end here, I'm going to be wiping off some of the glue squeeze out. So one of the things I do, I've seen others do, when you do a glue up like this, on the bottom part, I cleaned off the top pretty good, but on the bottom part, you see a lot of this squeeze out. I've let it sit now for about, an hour. So what I'm going to do now is just use a putty knife and scrape it off. And see, it's quite congealed, so it's not like it's still wet and pushing around everywhere. I still will have to sand this down pretty good. But see how it's kind of rubbery on there? So it's coming off really good. And like I say, I still got to finish it. I got to sand it down, and I'm probably going to run it through the planer. Now, this one had a little bit of wetness on it, so I might get a wipe and take it off. Quite a bit of squeeze out. I made sure I had enough glue on this glue up. So I definitely could have waited a little bit longer. They weren't quite congealed enough, but got the big part of it off. Like I said, I'm going to have to sand this all down anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. Okay, now that everything glued up and dried, what I'm going to do now is square off one end with my table saw sled, and then I'm going to cut the other end, get it all down to size. Unfortunately, my glue up, it still has a little bit of a rock, so I just built a table saw sled that I'm going to run it through the planer, which I plan to do anyway to kind of get it nice and smoothed out. But yeah, so I'll cut this down to size, and then we'll run it through the planer. So plans have changed a little bit, so we're going to actually square this off first before we go into my planer. I need to get it to fit. My planer is only a 12-inch planer. I need to get it cut down to size, so I figured I'd go ahead and do all that first before I run it through the planer here in a second. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is run this through the planer. It actually was pretty level once I chopped the sides off to size. It didn't have any rocking, so I'm not going to use my sled. I'm just going to run it through the planer to get it nice and even. What I am going to do is I'm going to run some stock through on the front and the back, and that's to eliminate any snipe that might occur. So that'll be the plan, and we'll see how it goes. So just running it through the planer now to get everything kind of smoothed out. Made a number of passes to get it all done, and it looks good. Okay, a number of passes through the planer, a lot of number of passes through the planer, and finally got it down to a good finish. I'm happy with it. So next step will be to round over everything, cut 2 handholds in the sides. Gonna be little handholds right here on the sides, on both sides, and then we'll finish it. So I'm taking our inspiration board, at least for size, and I'm going to mark out the handholds where they need to be on both sides to get ready to cut those out. So just marking out where those handholds are going to be, and then I'm going to get a couple pieces of scrap here so I don't have a lot of blowout on the back end of this thing. And then I took a small piece of scrap with my Forstner bit and just made sure it was going to work without blowout. So the test piece worked good, so then I went ahead and drilled out on each end of the handhold, and this will be where I start with my jigsaw to cut it out here, which you'll see in a second. And I had to go and get all the parts and pieces I needed for my jigsaw, the right blade, wanted to get the right combination square here to make a nice clean cut on both sides, and it worked good. And then I went over to my oscillating sander, put a small little tiny oscillating sander on here to go inside those handholds so I could sand them from the inside. You see me kind of getting it all connected there. And then once it gets going, I can just sand and sand and sand, and it worked better than I thought. I was worried it might not. So, but yeah, sanded both sides, and it was good to go. Okay, so got the holes drilled through. You're in a good spot. Up next is going to be a round over over the insides here and here and all the way around on both sides. And then I'm going to do a nice sanding on it and then board butter. And that'll be good. So I've got my palm router here, got a round over bit in it, and it's just rounding over everything, standing in front of the camera. Around the edges and on the inside of the handholds, did all the way around on both sides of the board, and it came out pretty good. And next is sanding everything down. So I started with a 120 grit, I went down to a 220, and then I also did a lot of hand sanding in here to get the insides of these handholds in and out. So it took me a little bit to kind of get everything sanded down. There was a few burn marks from my round over bit, so I had a lot to get out of that. It was a mistake on my part, but it all ended up being sanded out pretty well. And at the very end, I go down to actually 320 and get it really nice and smooth. And now that it's all sanded nice and smooth, I'm putting on some board oil here with my Howard's board oil, which is just basically just mineral oil. Okay, I have the first coat on. It's looking pretty good. I got both sides done. So I'm gonna have to do about 4 coats on this thing because it's raw wood. So I'll be letting this one dry for a few hours, put a second coat on. Tomorrow I'll come in, put a third coat on, and possibly a 4th coat on. And then we should be good to go. Well, that's it for this video. It turned out really, really good. I'm very, very happy with it. It looks really cool. It looks nice. Feels really good too. It's got 3 coats of my cutting board oil, Howard's cutting board oil on it. And I really like the way it turned out. I did take it down to 320 grit, so it's nice and smooth, so it looks really good. This was an interesting build where the initial product looks fairly simple, but the different tools I had to use to get this made goes everywhere from my wind jointer, so my brand new wind jointer that I got. This is the first project I used for that. My joints are absolutely perfect on here. My table saw sled, which I've not used in a while, to get it cut to a certain size. And then I just used my table saw to rip it to size as well. And then I used my planer to plane it down. So I actually made a planer sled for this because I thought it was a bit uneven. But once I got it cut to size and I checked it, it was very flat. So I didn't have to use that planer sled at all. So I used my planer, got it all down, got rid of a lot of the glue up. I did get rid of as much as glue squeeze out as I could, but I wanted to get it totally, cut down and nice and smooth. So I did that on the planer. And then once we got that done, I used my Forstner bit to cut out the handholds on both sides. And then I used my rigid oscillating sander to sand down the insides of these. And then I used a round over bit with my palm router to round over all the edges everywhere, right? And then I just sanded it down, and it was my first time using, again, this Howard's board oil. So a lot of first times for me in this project. It worked out really well, so I'm very happy with it. So if you got anything out of this video, got a laugh, or you learned anything at all, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe down below. And I'll see you in the next video.